we're gonna sit down and go through every single book that I read in February, and I'm gonna tell you guys if I loved it, hated it, was obsessed with it, or if I DNF'd it. My brain has been hijacked by fantasy romance this February, and I'm so glad. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know how I'm ever going to go back to reading like regular dark romance or contemporary romance. Give me the wings. Give me the vampires. Give me the High Lord, High Fae, magical powers. Some of these male heroes in these books have become my all-time favorite book boyfriends. So let's get into it, baby. You can see already what books we're going to discuss. At the beginning of the month, I started to read a couple of dark romances and normal contemporary romances, and they were just not doing it for me. They were lacking. I couldn't connect to the story. And I just thought, like, what the fuck is going on with me? A lot of you suggested that I switch up my genre, so that's what I did, and now I'm never going back. The first book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this was actually a reread for me. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses back in 2021, or maybe it was early 2022 when I was pregnant and I was going through a slump. I won't lie, I did not connect with this story as much as I did this time round back when I first read it. I just wasn't in the headspace to jump on the fantasy bandwagon back then, and I was actually quite disappointed that I didn't connect with the story at the time because it was so hyped up and so many people were talking about it. Everyone on Bookstagram, BookTok, BookTube was talking about it, and I wanted to become a part of the hype, and it just didn't tickle my dick. But this time around was so fucking different. I love this series with my entire fucking heart. It's in my top 3 favorite series of all time. These books have definitely become one of those like Roman Empire books where the characters will never leave you and you're constantly thinking about them and imagining what they would look like and imagining fake scenarios and fake conversations that they would have between each other. If you haven't read this already, the first book is A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the same title as the entire series. I will be completely fucking honest with you. The first book, I don't love. It is a snooze fucking fest. Well, it was for me. It was a complete and utter snooze fest. It's not until like 3/4 into the book that I started enjoying it. The world building was a bit much for me, but once I got over that, it started a thing. My favorite book is A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book in the series. And then we have A Court of Wings and Ruin. Then there is the novella A Court of Frost and Starlight. This is the last book for now. From what I've gathered, I believe Sarah J. Maas is writing 3 more books for this series, but this one here is A Court of Silver Flames. The 4th book is actually written in 3rd person, which I cannot fucking stand, and probably would have liked a lot more if it wasn't written in 3rd person, but because I'm so in love with this series and the characters, I pushed through it. If world building, like reading about world building, is hard for you, I would suggest that you listen to the audio for the first book and then switch to ebook or paperback for the rest. I feel like everyone knows how obsessed I am with A Court of Thorns and Roses now because I've mentioned it constantly on my Instagram as well as in every YouTube video as of recent. Because I read that, I was like, all right, it is time. It is time to dive into all the other really popular fantasy series. So I read Fourth Wing. Now, funny story, I bought Fourth Wing back when it was released, before it got the hype that it has. And I was fully planning on reading it. I even started it. I read the first page and thought, what the fuck am I doing? I am not a fantasy bitch. This is not gonna work. And I actually sold my copy. But then I repurchased it recently because of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I entered the world of dragons, and oh my fucking god, do I love this book. It is so good. It's so good. So good. I loved it the most because the world building wasn't too intense. It was quite easy to read. I fell in love with so many of these characters. I loved the enemies to lovers kind of romance that you see in this book between the main characters, Violet and Xaden. I was fully invested in their relationship and I love Xaden so much. He is a spunky monkey bitch. He is sex on fictional legs. Like, he's everything and more. Oh, so invested. My favorite part of Fourth Wing is the dragons. I am solely reading this series for the dragons. Anything could happen to Xaden and Violet, but I want to see their fucking dragons. If you haven't read this, pretty much, how do I summarize it? We've got a military war college. The students enter this college to become a rider, and these riders ride dragons. It's not set in our world. It's full-blown fantasy. There's a war going on. There's a lot of politics to do with this story and what is happening between certain groups of people. You meet Violet on the first page and it's written in her perspective. She is entering this war college. Even though she has spent her entire life studying to be something else, her mum has just chucked her in here regardless of her lack of capability of becoming a rider, and you have to watch her struggle and fight and become a boss-ass bitch. Now, I found Fourth Wing to be quite fast-paced. I didn't lose interest, and the ending left me craving more, so I instantly went out and got Iron Flame. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotions about this book. As I said, Fourth Wing didn't have a ton of world building. It had like enough for me to understand what was going on, the politics between the people, what the war was about, all of that. I got all that information and I was cool and I understood it. I wasn't lost. I wasn't bored. Iron Flame felt like a fucking history book about the story instead of feeling like the actual story, if that makes sense. Also, the lack of dragons. I'm totally reading Fourth Wing and this entire series for the fucking dragons, and this book lacked so many dragon scenes. It broke my heart. The whole time I was like, where are my fucking dragons? There was simply not enough of the dragons. Xaden and Violet's relationship I also lost interest in because I found it so fucking repetitive and boring. Like, what were they fighting about? The entire fucking time, Xaden and Violet were just arguing about the most stupid shit ever. Violet was constantly like, why are you lying to me? And then Xaden would be like,
but you haven't asked me any of the questions.
And I was just like, oh my God, there was no like relationship development, like no character development within their relationship, and it bored me. I also feel like that they fell in love way too quick and like announced their love to each other in Iron Flame. In Fourth Wing, their relationship kind of felt lackluster in Iron Flame. The plot twist though, I will read the next book because the plot twist left me sitting at the edge of my fucking seat. I pushed through this book. There was so many things that I didn't like. There was so many new characters, new character names. I was having trouble keeping up with who the fuck was who. But again, the fucking cliffhanger. We need to discuss who the hell is Venom. I truly believe Violet's father is Venom and he's gonna pop up in the next book. Something about Violet's family just ain't clicking, bitch, it ain't clicking. I have theories upon theories for Venom and who is Venom and if Violet is related to them or even if Violet is half Venom. I'm also concerned with this plot twist at the end of the book with Xaden becoming Venom. Guys, what's going to happen to the foursome? Like the dragons and Violet and Xaden. Is Xaden still going to be bonded to his dragon? What is that going to do for the awesome foursome? Like I need to figure out these answers ASAP, but the next book isn't out yet. Even though I wasn't in love with Iron Flame the same way that I was with Fourth Wing, I'm still invested. Like the answers to my questions need to happen soon. Sooner rather than later. Every Tom, Dick and Harry has been talking about the serpent and the wings of night. This was really conflicting. I actually ended up posting on Instagram asking if I should continue on reading this book because pretty much the first half bored me to death. I love vampires and this is a vampire fantasy novel. I wasn't convinced or invested until about halfway. So we got this human girl who has been rescued as a child by a vampire king and he has raised her as his own. There is a contest coming up soon that happens every now and then, and if you win this contest you get to ask the gods for like a wish to be granted. So the vampire king is training his human daughter to not only survive a world filled with vampires who obviously want to kill her, eat her and use her, but also train her for this contest so she can win and be granted like power from the goddess. While she's in the contest kicking ass, she allies herself with another male vampire within the contest, and things kind of happen there. When I tell you, halfway through this book, I was falling asleep and then shit started happening. It was all fucking happening. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Turning pages, couldn't stop, needed to get to the end. I ended up falling in love with this story and the cliffhanger. These authors of these fantasy novels know how to write a fucking cliffhanger, and that's what gives me life. I love a book with a cliffhanger. If it doesn't have a cliffhanger, boring. Give me all the feels at the end of the book and make me want to fucking run to the bookstore. So many of you had convinced me to continue on with reading this, and I'm so glad that you did, because the second book, which I actually don't have, The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I loved this book. It was so fucking good. So good. Much better than the first book, and it kept me completely hooked and entertained the entire time. I loved the relationship between the human and her vampire ally turned enemy. I highly recommend this duet because I loved it. I did. If you are reading the first book and you feel a little bit snoozy, you could DNF it. I challenge you to keep pushing on to get to the end of the book and start the second one, because it's so good. I believe there's going to be more books in this series. I don't know. I haven't kind of like looked into it. I hope there is, because I really enjoyed this world. It gave me kind of similar to A Court of Thorns and Roses, but we're just dealing with vampires. Like, I really loved the vampire aspect. So, you know, your girl is going to be on the search for more vampire books very, very soon. I've got a couple on my TBR. As I said, I'm so obsessed with like different worlds and realms and magical powers and old fae men and ancient vampires. And I can't believe I'm finally here. It took me how many years? I remember like 4 years ago, people were like, bitch, you need to read fantasy. And I was like, no way, no way. Now I'm here. I'm wondering why it took me so fucking long, because it's just so much better. I will have to have palette cleanser reads. If you're reading a lot of fantasy like back to back, it can be very like harsh on the brain. Like, before I went into the vampire books after Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, I was like, I need a nap. I need a long fucking nap. That was a lot to take in. Hopefully I can find a nice balance, because we know that I like to hyperfixate on my genres. If I'm in the mood for fantasy, that's all I'm going to be fucking reading. If you have read any of these, let me know in the comments below your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. If you want to read them, I suggest you do, because you'll have one hell of a fucking time. I know there's a lot of people wondering if I'm going to read Throne of Glass, and I will. That universe from Sarah J. Maas intimidates me a lot, because there's so many fucking books, and then you've got Crescent City. I don't want to think about it. It stresses me out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, thumbs up, subscribe before leaving, and I'll see you soon, shortly, one day soon. Bye.